This video contains spoilers for Arcane Season 1 and 2. I think that every viewer can find several things to admire in Vi, but I think one particular one is what made Caitlyn fall for her, and I'm going to discuss it here. Caitlyn has always lived in an environment that is super protected and accommodating. We know that Piltover is a very safe place, with enforcers keeping order and peace at every corner. Caitlyn comes from a rich family, so she has plenty of resources to provide for all her needs. She never suffers lack of anything. Moreover, her parents do everything to keep her safe, far from risky situations. We see this in two scenes in episode 4, season 1, in which she talks with Jace. First, at Progress Day, she tells him that her mother influenced the enforcers to assign Caitlyn to the very safe role of guard of their family tent at the fair. Later, when Jace visits Caitlyn after the explosion, he says that he and her parents want her to be safe and not exposed anymore to risks of explosions. So her parents convinced the enforcers to fire Caitlyn, and Jace negotiated to hire her in the safer security administration of his house. So Caitlyn lives in a very protected and artificially safe environment, despite feeling too limited in it and wanting to step outside. At the same time, despite being limited by this, Caitlyn has never been truly opposed and challenged. Yes, her parents and the whole society keep her safe despite her not wanting to, but they don't judge her as wrong for her desires. I'll explain better. Caitlyn is never challenged at a deeper level. Nobody ever questions her goals and principles. They might limit her exposure to risk, but they do not condemn her for wanting more. They just let her think whatever she prefers while limiting her movements. And even this limitation is not very effective. Caitlyn is rich and smart. She can use all her resources and important connections to do whatever she wants, such as freeing Vi from prison to be her guide in Zone. She keeps investigating about the criminality in Zone, despite the Sheriff Marcus reprimanding her in episode 3. Later, in episode 6, Marcus complains with Silco that Caitlyn can do whatever she wants, in contradiction to his orders, because she is a Kiraman. She knows she can break any rule because she has the resources to face the consequences, if there is any consequence to begin with. And not only her family is super influential for their wealth and name, but her mother directly participates to the government of Piltover. So probably she instills in Piltover similar values that she used in Caitlyn's education, resulting into Caitlyn living in an environment that completely reflects her values, never facing any real contradiction. Her parents limiting her desire for adventure actually increases Caitlyn's unchallenged values, since they prevent her from coming into contact with unexpected, unusual situations that could challenge what she knows until now. Vi is the first person that dares to challenge Caitlyn. Vi does not respect her out of fear for her power. Caitlyn probably did not tell her that she is a Kiraman, nor that her family participates in the council. In fact, when Vi arrives at Caitlyn's house in episode 8, she is surprised by the sophistication of the room they enter, and she asks, "Who lives here? Another counselor's friend of yours?" So she probably doesn't know the full connection of Caitlyn with wealth and the council. But even if Vi knew Caitlyn's wealth and power, she probably would not care. She is angry at the imbalance of power between Zone and Piltover, and even when speaking at the council in episode 8, she doesn't seem intimidated by the most powerful people in Piltover. She challenges them and insults them. She is probably the first person in Cait's experience that is loyal to her personal principles and can't be corrupted by power and wealth, unlike the whole society she has always lived in. Vi is the first person Caitlyn meets who is not intimidated by her prestigious position, and who does not give her a special treatment. Vi treats her like a normal person, like a peer, humbling her down. And she is probably one of the rare people who is her sincere self with Caitlyn, without acting hypocritical in order to please her and obtain her favor, and maybe some material advantages. Since the start, Vi is outspoken and sincere, and she challenges Caitlyn's assumptions. When they meet in prison for the first time, in episode 4, season 1, she initially shows no interest for Caitlyn's investigation that is so important to her. Then, she expresses that she views enforcers as criminals in a fancy uniform, very different than Caitlyn's idea of her role. For the first time, instead of being accommodated, Caitlyn is challenged. When they go to Zone, it's very evident that Caitlyn is way out of her comfort zone, since the very first step she takes into the Undercity. While Vi is practically flying from one ledge to the other, clearly very used to the environment, Caitlyn is much slower and clumsy. When she reaches Vi, she protests that it was not easy at all for her. Vi replies that even Zonite children can do it, making Caitlyn aware that she is probably the least skilled person in Zone right now. Vi also gives Caitlyn new clothes, since her uniform, that in Piltover earns so much respect, would be an obstacle for her in Zone. Caitlyn is a total helpless beginner in Zone, completely dependent on Vi. This is evident at the scene of Vi eating some sort of fish soup later. Caitlyn is super stressed about her investigation, while Vi is simply enjoying the meal and ignoring Caitlyn's complaints. A few seconds later, Vi shows Caitlyn that by eating there, she received some information from the cook, leaving Caitlyn speechless. Again, because of Vi, Caitlyn realizes that she has no clue of what is happening around her in Zone, and that she had mistaken assumptions about Vi's collaboration. Later in the brothel, Vi explicitly tells Caitlyn that she has a wrong attitude, probably the attitude that she used to have in Piltover, where everybody reveres her. She expects others to give her what she wants. But Vi explains that the logic in Zone is the opposite. She has to first cater to people's desires in order to obtain something from them, because this is how interactions between peers work. Later in the same episode, Caitlyn shines in one activity she's excellent at in Zone 2, shooting. Vi again blames her for letting Sevika escape. Caitlyn's excellent aim shoots repeatedly at Sevika's metal parts to scare her away, but not kill her. This is coherent with the Piltovian logic of Caitlyn, where harm is limited. On the contrary, Vi's logic wanted Sevika not to escape. But in this case, it's Vi's impulsivity for fights that screwed up first, so Caitlyn is not intimidated by her reproach. However, later, Caitlyn is forced to give up the only good skill she has in Zone. She bargains her rifle for a shimmer medicine to cure Vi. Caitlyn accepts to become actually helpless to prioritize curing Vi, the real person that empowers her and enables her to pursue her goals in Zone. Moreover, by now she started trusting her more. While curing her, she reveals to her that she noticed her good heart. Caitlyn might be unfamiliar with Zone environment, but she can still recognize which acts are selfish and which ones are selfless in this new environment. She is new to Vi's logic, her assumptions are challenged by it, but she recognizes the underlying good motives, even if she is not used to Vi's approach to situations she has never faced in Piltover. Later, we also notice that Caitlyn is starting to feel attracted to Vi when she hesitates for a moment, with their faces very close to each other and looking at her lips. The attractions makes Caitlyn more susceptible to Vi's judgments. I will not list all the other instances of Vi challenging Caitlyn, but it keeps happening a lot. Vi says openly what she thinks, forcing Caitlyn to reflect on her own morals and assumptions, and opening new perspectives to her. This is why, while being with Vi, Caitlyn becomes more aware of her own biases, and she is able to reflect on the right things to do without assuming that her initial ideas are the best. Moreover, when she trusts and falls in love with Vi, she allows herself to be more vulnerable with her, and she lets Vi influence her feelings and self-regulation. Then in season 2, something changes. At the start, while being torn by the grief for her mother and the rage against Jinx, Caitlyn still finds reassurance in Vi, especially when looking in each other's eyes. But then she prioritizes avenging her mother and sees Vi's calming effect on her as an obstacle. During the fight against Jinx and Sevika, while Caitlyn is about to shoot an innocent child, Vi is not able to calm her down. There is a significant symbol in Caitlyn keeping her rifle on aim, with her eye behind the pointer. She's thirsty for Jinx's blood, and the only thing she sees in this situation are targets for her bullets. She is looking at everything through the crosshair. Her eyes right now are immune to Vi's influence. So Vi intervenes directly to stop her, and later again she criticizes her actions. But Caitlyn needs to act like this in order to avenge her mother. So she distances herself from Vi. Instead of her, in episode 4, Maddie appears at Caitlyn's side. I have already discussed the relationship between Maddie and Caitlyn in another video. Here I will discuss something else. Maddie's attitude towards Caitlyn's motives. Maddie is basically a yes man, the opposite of Vi. She never questions Caitlyn, she never challenges her. In episode 4, while they are in bed, she comforts Caitlyn's doubts. She stops her from blaming herself for some issues she struggles with, such as the Noctions increasing their requests, by highlighting the benefits of safety that comes from them. She tells her that she could decide anything she wants, for example, re-establishing the council, and by stopping her from thinking about possible complications. She tells her that she is Piltover's leader and everybody will accept her decisions as inherently right. Later, before Ambessa shows up to meet Caitlyn, Maddie quickly still reminds Caitlyn that she still has options to deal with problems as she prefers. And in episode 8, while reflecting on how to face the impending Noxian invasion, Maddie still reassures Caitlyn that she did nothing wrong. But at this point, the situation has changed again. Caitlyn distances herself from Maddie, physically and metaphorically, because she has met Vi again in episode 6. I have already discussed Vi and Caitlyn's reunion and what happens in that scene, so now I will discuss other elements coherent with the current topic. For example, in episode 6, season 2, there is one moment where Vi's renewed effect on Caitlyn becomes very evident. When Caitlyn meets Jinx, she is immediately filled with rage. But 1 second later, she sees Vi, and her facial expression softens, especially her eyes. In episode 8 of season 2, Caitlyn is aware of the positive influence Vi has on her and on her judgment, and she intentionally looks for it. First, she reveals that she waited for Vi to wake up and discuss with her before deciding anything about Jinx. In that conversation, Vi points out that it's unfair for Caitlyn to have the power to give or refuse second chances at her will, making her aware of this issue. Then Caitlyn orchestrates a whole plan to enable Vi directly to make the final decision about Jinx. And this dynamic between Caitlyn and Vi is reminded by Vi's last lines too. I have already discussed these lines in depth, but not linked to this precise topic. Vi is like the dirt under Caitlyn's nail. She is there to remind her constantly that she is not perfect, and to make her acknowledge her mistakes and lead her to fix them. There is one last important thing. Caitlyn loves Vi and wants her on her side, not only because she admires her values and likes the fact that she makes her a better person. Vi is also one of the few people who Caitlyn can be sure sincerely loves her for the person she is, not because of her precision position. Caitlyn has always been used to be treated like the Princess of Piltover by people fascinated by her position, not by her. Maddie seems to fall into this category too. On the contrary, Vi is immune to the charm of her position, so Caitlyn has no doubt that her love for her is specifically for her, not for whoever happens to be the current princess of Piltover. I find it very interesting that Caitlyn falls for Vi because she does not treat her like a princess, while the reason Vi falls for Caitlyn is the exact opposite, like I explained in this video. Let me know in the comments what you think of my interpretation or if you have a different opinion. Like, subscribe for more Arcane video essays, and thanks for watching. Bye!